Hello, friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to another episode of the Michelle Fondin Author vlog. I'm here with my pals, Gudetama and Grogu, and I have my Grogu tumbler, my brand new one. See how cute that is. My brand new Grogu tumbler with Ticino, dandelion caramel nut tea. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I say that every time, but it really is so good. I am here to talk to you about why I don't drink or use any other mind-altering substances. This is a question I got so often in my daily living, and I'm gonna go through my logic there. A lot of you might be thinking it's because I dated an alcoholic for 5.5 years, which most of you know because I've produced so many videos on that topic, but that's really not the major reason why I don't drink alcohol or use any other mind-altering substances. So if you are interested, please do stay tuned. If you're new to my channel, thank you for subscribing below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. I do readings, tarot, and astrology. You can book that on my website, michellefondinauthor.com. In this vlog, I like to present topics related to the books that I've written. Now, of course, you know, if you have been here for a while, and if you haven't been here, welcome. I write about health, wellness, mind-body health, empowerment in relationships, self-empowerment, self-love. And so the two books that are going to be related to this topic are this one, Help, I Think My Loved One is an Alcoholic, a survival guide for lovers, family, and friends. And my latest and greatest, The Empowered Divine Feminine, Becoming an Unstoppable Woman in the 21st Century and Beyond. All right, so I'm gonna relate the topic back to those two books and the reasons why they're so pertinent to this topic. I'm gonna get really personal here. I've never really gotten super personal on my lifestyle habits as far as the why of the lifestyle habits. In my books, I get way deeper, but of course on YouTube, it's just different because I've done mostly teaching topics. I haven't done a lot of vlog-like topics. I've done vlogs, believe me, but I haven't dug deep into various topics. It's been more targeted, for example, for twin flames and my twin flame journey, right? Let's go back to the why I don't drink or use any substances. But in order to do that, I really need to take you back pretty far. When I was a kid, and this is like below age 12, when I was a kid, I noticed that there was a lot of sickness in my family. There was a lot of mental illness in my family. Now this is extended family. I didn't really know about my parents until much later in life, but there was a lot of mental illness in my family. There was a lot of physical illnesses in my family, notably with my father. My father had his first heart attack. I think he was like 40 or maybe 42. And a lot of that can be attributed to his lifestyle. He was a heavy smoker until I think he was like 36. He had bladder cancer pretty early on too, I would say early 40s. And I was seeing this transpire as a kid, and I always was very cognizant of the fact that I didn't want to live my life so that I would be susceptible to illness. So those were really the seeds that were planted in my mind way back before I became an adult. And I'm gonna talk about this more like in a health video based on like health and fitness and the Wheel of Healing with Ayurveda. But I started like doing aerobics when I was 12. Like I started dieting probably around that time too. It had always been in the back of my mind that I wanted to live life healthfully. And in fact, it was a prayer that I had when I was very young, and we're talking well under age 10 or 12. It was like probably 6, 7, or 8 that I would say this prayer to God is like, please let me live to age 100 in sound body, mind, emotions, psychology, spirit. Like I would literally go through the gamut of everything there is to know about health. Is that a coincidence? Or was that just left over from a past life? because that is a pretty interesting prayer for a young person to have. That was really like the seeds that had been planted in my mind about health and wellness. And then fast forward to my teenage years, and I lived, if you read any of my books, you know without a shadow of the doubt that I had a pretty tumultuous upbringing. I talk about it a ton in this book, The Empowered Divine Feminine. I also talk about it a lot in The Wheel of Healing with Ayurveda. But I mean, I would say like this book and The Wheel of Healing with Ayurveda and Enlightened Medicine is where I really get down and dirty about how I was raised, my parents, my upbringing. And I had a pretty tumultuous upbringing. I mean, that's just putting it super mildly, like very, very mildly. I also grew up in Michigan. And in Michigan, there's not a lot to do. I also grew up in the 80s. All right, so we are compounding here, right? No computers, no devices, no iPhones, no internet. Being in a place where there's just not a lot to do. The major activity of the time as I was becoming a teenager growing up was drinking. That was the major activity of the time. There were always occasions to go out with your friends, to drink alcohol, to go to parties. People had house parties. You would drink at football games. You would drink at bonfire parties in the woods. You would drink at lake parties. Like there was just opportunities to drink everywhere. And I feel that because I had such a harsh upbringing and because I had so much emotional baggage related to that upbringing from a very early age, I would say I was 14, probably 15 at the most. I started to drink very, very heavily. And I would drink very heavily on the weekends. And I just thought it was normal because everybody around me was doing it. All the kids around me were doing it. It was the only thing anybody did. And so that really continued throughout my high school years. And then that continued as well into my college years. And it was just a lot of drinking, a lot of binge drinking. Now, I never really tried drugs. The only thing I ever did was I smoked pot once. I mean, I was 16. I wanted to try it. It freaked me out and I never did that again. I may have in college, somebody may have handed me a joint and I may have taken a hit, but I don't even think I inhaled or anything. But other than that, nada, nothing, zip, zilch. I kept it to alcohol and only alcohol. Like I said, I didn't have a healthy relationship with alcohol. For me, it was an escapism. For me, it was masking the pain of having so much hurt and emotions and sorrow in my upbringing, having so many feelings suppressed, having no way to express those feelings or have a creative outlet to just talk about those things. So I did not have a healthy relationship with alcohol. Now, for me, I didn't consider it to be a problem because it was mostly on the weekends. And also it was like everybody else in my environment was doing it. So it just didn't faze me as being something abnormal. It was completely normal where I grew up, where I went to college. And I never in a million years considered it to be anything but normal. I got pregnant in college really early. Now, being mindful of health, so having that in the back of my mind, and also practicing a lot of healthful things. So there was this binge drinking on the weekends, but practicing vegetarianism and working out like crazy and teaching aerobics and everything and doing ballet, of course. I grew up doing ballet. I made the decision that if I ever became a mother, if I ever got pregnant, that I would stop all folly, if you will. And so I did. I found out I was pregnant and there was no drinking, no smoking. I used to smoke cigarettes too in college and high school. So there was no drinking, no smoking. Of course, I never tried any other drugs, so drugs were out of the question anyways. And I just became 100% sober, 100% clean, but I did it because I was pregnant and I did it because I wanted to be a good mother. Now, fast forward throughout my marriage, because I got married super young, my husband and I would drink occasionally, but he really didn't drink a lot except for a glass of wine at dinner sometimes. And then I opted to not drink most of the time. For me, it was for health reasons. For me, it was for clarity of mind. For me, I felt like I would be an irresponsible mom or parent if I did drink alcohol. And so I began to have just like this really negative association connected to alcohol and being in control, having a clear mind, being responsible, and also being healthy. I mean, being healthy was a huge on my list as well. And at one point, we moved back to France from the US, and this was between 2005 and 2008. And we literally lived in wine country. Our neighbors had a vineyard that was adjoining our property. We were literally living in wine country. And during that time period between 2005 2008, I had this huge health kick, like this enormous health kick, and also this humongous spiritual awakening. Now, I talk about this in my other vlog about spiritual awakening when I was married. I'll put the link to that right here so you can check that out. But it was such an interesting time because here I was living basically on a vineyard, and I never took a sip of alcohol in those 3 years that I was living in the south of France, on the vineyard, in wine country. I just never, ever did it. And that was kind of like the most bizarre thing ever. But of course, I didn't consider myself to be like, oh, I'm never drinking alcohol ever again. I just was like, well, I want to lose some weight. I had a baby at the time. I think my youngest was 2.5 when we moved to France. So I still had a little bit of extra baby weight that I wanted to lose. So I was on a health food kick. I was on an exercise kick. I wanted to get fit and healthy. And so just alcohol just didn't fit into that equation at that time. And then of course, when I moved back to the States, I would drink occasionally with friends or if I went out, but it was really restricted to very, 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 very occasional. So we're talking once every few months or maybe twice a year. And so it never really appealed to me to be anything other than that. There was never a question in my mind that I needed to. There was never a question in my mind that I wanted to. The reality is, when it came time for me to be in the relationship with the alcoholic person, I found myself drinking a lot more to try to keep up with him in the very, very beginning. We're talking about like the first month or two. And then when I realized that, this is like kind of a problem for him, that's really when I tapered back and I was just like, yeah, I don't want to participate in this. This is nuts. And it's kind of from that point forward that I just made the decision not to integrate alcohol into my life at all. So no alcohol, no drugs, no smoking, no vaping, no nothing, no mind-altering substances besides caffeine. And I know that's debatable. I mean, caffeine does alter your mind in a way, but I wouldn't consider it to be a mind-altering drug, right? So it became also kind of problematic with my decision because when my kids grew up and I moved to California and I severed myself from that relationship with the alcoholic person, I wanted to make friends. And the problem is that most activities today, in the US at least, revolve around some type of drinking, some type of alcohol, either going on a vineyard tour, going to a pub, going to taste beers. I think beer gardens, or I don't even know what they're called anymore. Going to breweries is very popular here. Going to wine tastings is very popular here. Anything centered around drinking is very popular here. And so in the beginning, before I knew anybody, I was really scared. Like I was super duper duper scared about how do I go to these social events and not drink, or tell people that I'm not drinking and I don't drink alcohol. And how can I be accepted into social groups in this way? And I got in my head a lot about it. I got in my head a lot about how do I go about having a social life being sober. And the thing was, it wasn't even like I had a problem, so that's why I'm sober. It was just a mindful decision for my own health and well-being. And it's not something that I ever felt I needed in my life. So, and that's another thing that's so odd, that I was having a conversation just the other day with a friend, and he's like an acquaintance friend. Like, I've seen him enough that I guess I can call him a friend, but it's not someone I see outside of social groups. He was sitting down at this event with me, and he was just saying to me, like, you don't drink, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, you never drink? I'm like, no. And he goes, you never drink? And I was like, no. And he's like, why? Why don't you drink? And I just said, well, because, I mean, I make the joke that like, oh, I want to stay young and pretty, which is true, but that's only one of the reasons. He just seemed so disturbed by that. And honestly, I take that as one example, but I've had that feedback so many times. So what I want to bring to you, like if you've been struggling with this, or if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum where you're like, yeah, I don't see socializing without alcohol, like that just doesn't make sense to me. Or you are contemplating maybe stopping drinking for any given reason, whether it's health reasons or weight related reasons or having clarity of mind reasons, or just, it's just you want to make a lifestyle change. That's it. I think it's super important that we explore kind of these reasons why people drink and why it's so socially accepted in society that it makes it weird if you don't drink. Like, I met with a dating coach. This was, gosh, and it was kind of for funsies and games. I didn't sign up with a dating coach, but I just did it for fun because I wanted to see what it was. When she was going through the checklist with me, she said, like, do you drink? And I said, no. And then she said, are you sober? I said, yes. But she goes, well, did you have a problem? And I said, no. And she goes, oh, well, I have to ask because a lot of people that don't drink are recovering alcoholics. And I was just like, no, that's not my case. I'm just, whatever. I just, for lifestyle and health and wellness and fitness and all that. It gets to the point where it's so normalized in society that you're looked at as weird or abnormal or a recovering alcoholic if you don't drink, if you don't want to drink. And that happens especially like if you're over 25. I've spoken to a lot of Zoomers, for example, those that are 25 and under, who opt not to drink. And it's more socially accepted for them in their peer groups to not drink. Now, a lot of them have replaced it with marijuana or vaping as a replacement mind-altering thing, if you will. But I've heard that more and more in my social circles when I'm socializing with mixed age groups, that I've heard more of the younger Zoomer, or I don't know, I guess it's the age of Zoomers, right? Like 25 and under, that are saying, oh no, I don't drink. And it just seems like a normal thing for them. But I'm talking about like if you're over 25, it's so abnormal to opt to not drink ever, to really abstain from alcohol and drugs completely forever. and it's just a lifestyle choice that you're making. And so you're brought about with a lot of challenges as a result of that. One of the things that I want to ask you, if that is a part of your normal living, and you're obviously watching this, so there's some intrigue here. And so my question to you, to reverse the question that guy had asked me is like, well, why don't you drink? You never drink. Like, why? My question to you is, why do you drink? Like, what does it bring to the table? What does it bring to your life? And that's really where my two books come in. So they help, I think, my loved one is an alcoholic. So I'll talk about this really quickly and like why I raised that question, because it's like really interesting how I got there with this book. So with this book, I was doing research on alcoholism, addiction, and recovery when I was dating the person who was an alcoholic. This was early in the process, probably like 2014. When I was looking at like, how do I understand the alcoholic and the alcoholic brain? Like, how do I understand the person? there was so little resources for family and friends of alcoholics. So little resources that, Al-Anon has resources, but I was just looking for a run-of-the-mill book, not about recovery necessarily, but about like crawling into the mind of the alcoholic to see like why they do what they do. And so to that end, I did a bunch of research, like medical research. And then I interviewed 10 alcoholics in long-term recovery. For me, they had to be in AA. And that's, for some of you that don't know, that's Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous. They had to be in AA because they had to be working a 12-step program for me, because it's really hard to talk to someone who's in recovery, because a lot of them will still lie and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm in recovery. And they're not in recovery. They're just dry drunks, if you will, because there's always something that drives the alcoholic to become an alcoholic, and it's multifaceted, right? It's physical, it's brain chemical. A lot of times it's genetics. And then it is emotional, psychological, behavioral, like there are relational, there's so many aspects to it, including spiritual. And so when I put down the criteria for the people I wanted to talk to be in the book, I went to like different AA meetings. I posted stuff in meetup groups that were for sobriety meetup groups. And I said, I need to talk to at least 10 alcoholics in long-term recovery. For me, long-term recovery meant more than 2 years, and talk about their story. And so that's what I did. In this book, it's a compilation of 10 alcoholics in long-term recovery under different topics. So for example, one of the topics is, sorry, I just flipped too fast, how his or her relationship with alcohol began, right? I talked a little bit about my relationship with alcohol. And then I examine different things like trust in themselves, trust in relationships. And then I go to the outlines of each of these people's stories. So the reason I'm talking about it in this way is that each person, when they make a lifestyle decision, when they make a lifestyle choice, there's always something behind it, right? There's always something behind it. So if you choose to consume alcohol and other drugs, it's because there is a reason behind that. Some people use it as a social lubricant where they feel too insecure in social groups and they have a hard time interacting with other people unless they've had some alcohol. In the same way, a lot of people use it as liquid courage, right? To be able to do things in public in a group that they normally would not do. A classic example is going to a karaoke event with a friend and they're like, oh, I need to drink, 2 or 3 shots before I sing a song, before I go on stage and sing a song. And that always stems from a sense of insecurity. It stems from not feeling worthy. It stems from low self-esteem, low self-worth. And that's why this book comes into play, The Empowered Divine Feminine. Now, I know this is geared toward women. And if you're a man watching this, sorry, there are many other resources, but this is really about empowerment coming from within, not empowerment through substances, not empowerment through food and drink, but empowerment because it's something that you find within you from the inside. Because when I think about not drinking, it's because I don't need to, right? I don't need the social lubricant to feel social. I don't need the liquid courage to get on stage and sing a song, a karaoke song. I don't need a drink at the end of the night because I've had a rough day. I just do other things. I meditate, I do yoga, I do some deep breathing, I journal. And so oftentimes with something that is mind altering that we take, it's because we do not have the tools to replace a habit with alcohol or drugs. Of course, alcohol is way more common, but with alcohol that is so commonly accepted, and it's almost like ultra normalized. When I say ultra normalized means if you don't do it, somebody looks at you like you're weird. So it's ultra normalized. And it's mostly because people don't have any other way to replace that habit. So I don't know, I'm just gonna challenge you this time to just think about it, because it does more damage to your body, in all honesty, than good. It deprives your brain of oxygen. It really does. I mean, why do you think you have that high, or not really high, the drunken feeling? It's because it alters your neurotransmitters. It closes the synapses. It deprives the cells of oxygen. It's not doing great things to your body, guys. It actually ages your cells much faster. I could go into it. I'm not gonna go into it here because that's not the point of this video, but like, if you're interested in knowing like the mechanics of it, do read the book. But yeah, I think it's mostly, for me, it's just that there is nothing that alcohol could give me that I don't already have within. You know, I don't have the need for that. Now, if you ask me about caffeine, that's a whole other thing. Although I'm pretty moderate with caffeine too. I don't do anything caffeinated except for coffee or tea, and that's only once or twice a day. So I don't even think there's excess in that either. So I hope you enjoyed my story, but I hope they got you thinking too. It's like, if you have a relationship with alcohol or any other substance that's mind altering, if you have a relationship with alcohol, maybe just examining that relationship and just thinking about why. Why do you need to have a relationship with that? Is it because you fear being ousted from your social group? Do you fear looking weird, or do you fear looking like a freak? Do you fear that you won't be able to do some favorite activities with your friends? Because I still do those activities. I still go to breweries. I just don't drink. I drink water. It's not that I can't go to these places. I go to these places. I just, you know, it's super cheap for me because I usually drink soda water or ice water, and they're both free. I just tip the bartender $1 or $2 for giving me the water. And it's no calories. So that's the best. It's free. It doesn't cost me any money, and it's 0 calories. Amazing. And I still have an amazing time. I hope this was helpful in just getting you to think about, again, your relationship with alcohol and other substances, as I shared my own experience in that. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on the bell, scroll up to all for all notifications. And thank you for giving the video a thumbs up. Hey, you know what? The only way you can support my YouTube channel is by buying 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 of my published books. Because on YouTube, the monetization of these videos is probably getting me like 50 cents. So way better support is by purchasing some books, booking a reading with me, and general support on the live streams. So thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.